Photodegradation of rhodamine 6G by amorphous titanium dioxide films grown on polymethylmathacrylate by Magnetron Sputtering.
This was published last 2017 in the journal Protection of Metals and Physical Chemistry of Surfaces, Volume 53, Issue 6 by Julius Andrew P. Nunez, Hernando S. Alaparo III, Michelle Marie S. Villamayor, Luis de los Santos Valladares, and Henry J. Ramos. So first, the title. The title of the study clearly indicates the subject and scope of the research and accurately captures what was done in the experiment. The key variables were identified, with the independent variable being the presence of the photocatalytic titanium dioxide and the dependent variable as the photodegradation of rhodamine 6G, thereby suggesting a relationship between the two and giving the reader an idea as to what the study is all about. It also effectively captures the reader's attention and stimulates interest in the research problem being investigated without compromising correct nomenclature from the field of study.
So for the abstract was succinct and concise but a bit underdeveloped due to the fact that it immediately started with the methodology employed in the experiment without prior introduction. The purpose of the study was not stated as well. The use of jargon was avoided, making it easy to read and understand. Moreover, the approach used and the results garnered from the experiment were clearly stated. However, the results on the varying oxygen-argon flow rate ratio on the photocatalytic activity was not included, though it was stated as one of the specific objectives in the introduction. Also, it lacked a discussion on the implications of these results and how it coincides with the objectives of the study. Lastly, some terms used in the abstract are a bit ambiguous. For instance, it was stated that complete degradation of rhodamine 6G was observed after 7 hours, implying 100% degradation. However, in the results in discussion, only 95.5% degradation was observed.
So next we have the introduction. The introduction was well organized, easy to follow, and effectively established the scope, context, and significance of the research being conducted. It summarized background information on photocatalysis by titanium dioxide, specifying that it does so by producing a reactive oxygen species, which functions in the degradation of refractory organic compounds. It also clearly stated the purpose of the work as a water purification method for wastewaters by clearly defining a problem that must be addressed and further defining the specific objectives of the study. Moreover, the rationale behind choosing the compounds used in the experiment, particularly for titanium dioxide, rhodamine 6G, and PMMA for the assay, were explained in detail. The methodological approach used in the research was also established by briefly providing an introduction on magnetron sputtering as a good deposition method for the study. Lastly, the introduction highlights potential outcomes of the study and its real-life applications on wastewater treatment, and also emphasizes the novelty of the research done.
So for the methodology, the manner in which the experimental procedures were stated was very detailed. The materials and equipment used were mentioned and the specific conditions were clearly defined. For materials and plasma deposition, the figure provided allows the visualization of the compact planar magnetron plasma sputtering device. The specifications of the device were also defined along with the specific manipulations done. For material characterizations, the several pieces of equipment used to characterize the substrate along with the conditions set were clearly specified. And for photodegradation experiment, the equipment used for the determination of the wavelength of maximum absorbance for rhodamine 6G was specified and the process was briefly stated. The generation of the standard curve was also briefly and concisely stated. However, the different concentrations of the 5 standard solutions used were not specified. Lastly, the photocatalytic activity of titanium dioxide was determined by measuring the absorbance of rhodamine 6G. The procedure of which was stated clearly and the conditions at which it was done were also specified.
For the results and discussion, other than minor misspellings in some parts here and there, the discussion had a good arrangement and was nicely done in such a way that the reader can understand how the researchers were able to come up with the results and the findings. Due to magnetron sputtering at low temperatures, the titanium dioxide deposited was amorphous in structure. However, the amorphous structure of titanium dioxide was not shown nor described. In the FTIR spectra of amorphous titanium dioxide deposited on the PMMA given, the peaks were labeled with their corresponding specific bonds, which allowed fast interpretation or comprehension of the data being presented in the graph. The spectra was also interpreted well, describing the specific peaks and explaining the reason behind the decrease in intensity for the absorption bands. The XPS spectra used to analyze surface chemistry was also explained and interpreted well. The peaks were attributed to their respective elements and to their corresponding bond or compound. The ratio of the area under the peaks were also interpreted, stating that it approaches stoichiometry. However, what the area under the peaks specifically represent was not directly stated. For the SEM micrographs, these were straightforward in showing the deposition of titanium dioxide on the PMMA. However, they can be a bit misleading since it was stated that there were no obvious differences in the morphology of the titanium dioxide deposited, yet the micrographs of the titanium dioxide deposited on the PMMA with varying oxygen to argon flow rate ratio appear to have different amounts of deposited titanium dioxide.
The increase in absorption of titanium dioxide on PMMA compared to that of only PMMA in the UV region, as shown in the UV-vis diffuse reflectance spectra, was explained properly. The method used to determine the band gap, however, was merely named and not explained. For the degradation of rhodamine 6G, it was stated that all amorphous titanium dioxide samples on PMMA demonstrated photocatalytic activity. It was also stated that the photocatalytic activity of titanium dioxide did not vary significantly, which was said to be acceptable since there was no significant difference in the optical property and surface morphology of the samples. However, based on the graph in Figure 8, the concentrations of rhodamine 6G varied, which may be interpreted as differences in the photocatalytic activity of the titanium dioxide nanoparticles on PMMA based on flow rate ratio. Exposure of up to 7 hours caused almost complete or 95.5% degradation of rhodamine 6G. However, the oxygen-argon flow rate ratio with which the amorphous titanium dioxide was grown on the PMMA was not stated. In other words, the amorphous titanium dioxide on PMMA used was not specified. Also, the graph in Figure 9 may be misleading since the legends are only labeled titanium dioxide and rhodamine 6G, which may imply that the one decreasing in concentration is titanium dioxide alone. A better legend would be rhodamine 6G alone for the red line and rhodamine 6G with titanium dioxide for the blue line. Regarding the photodegradation of rhodamine 6G, the mechanism of such was not stated along with the product of the degradation. Lastly, no quantitative statistics were provided to support the claims made, specifically the claim that there were no significant differences in the photocatalytic activity as well as in optical property and surface morphology of the samples.
Finally, the conclusion sufficiently summarized the main topics covered in the study, and a synthesis of key points was provided. The conclusion was able to restate the findings of the experiment. However, addition of recommendations and application of the study could further improve this. Overall, the study was able to present and interpret the findings of the study well.